Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first edition of the Birmingham Property News, where we will debate interesting articles that will affect Birmingham property, whether that be property itself, development, transport, anything. If you do want to take part, just let us know. Put a note in the comments or email info@birminghampropertynews.co.uk, and obviously we'll love to get you involved. My name's James Forrester. I'm the MD of a company called Barrows and Forrester that sponsors this show, and we love Birmingham. On the line today, we have Christian, a local estate agent. Christian, say hello.
Hi.
Great. And we also have my trusted person to make sure everything's working properly, Ewan. How are you doing today, Ewan?
Steady on.
Well, it's late, isn't it? We've had a busy day at work, and then we're straight into this. Our first show. We've eventually got it ready. It's exciting news. So let's get on with it, guys. So Ewan, your topic of the week, I believe, is all about how public transport affects the city centres, and in this instance, is affecting Birmingham. Good or bad, Ewan?
My question really is as a layperson to think about what does connectivity do to property prices, particularly. I mean, there's the obvious link of the fact that if you're near London, you can be paying a fair old bit, and there's lots of methods of getting in and out of London, and clearly it's a key part of living in the home counties is the connection infrastructure that gets you into a conurbation. But in terms of, so if you go into like Birmingham, or if you go into outlying areas like Solihull, the next large town up, those kind of things, what kind of, is there a sliding scale of how your public transport infrastructure indicates whether the property will be higher priced or lower priced versus, say, something like a school, which clearly does influence?
Yeah, it's a great question, because ideally you want both, don't you? You want to be within a catchment area of a great school and have great transport links into where you're going to go and work, within the city, and that's something we definitely see all the time. I think the closer you are to a train station or a metro stop, then definitely that has a more positive effect now on the property prices, because it just gives you that easier access into Birmingham city centre, which is something that is definitely needed, because the traffic at the moment is horrendous. This morning, well, what are we on today? We're on Wednesday, and I think for the last 3 days, in the morning, doing less than 6 miles, and unfortunately I have to use my car because then I'm running out looking at properties and advising clients on different investment strategies. I've spent every morning just to do 6 miles, between an hour to an hour and a half, just to get to my office. It's ridiculous. So we need better public transport, and we need better links. Is Birmingham ready yet? Are we investing enough? We're Andy Street. I'm a big fan of his, but he's saying a lot the right noise, but is he acting quick enough? We've seen the trams, the pink, and I've got the slide here if we want to show of what the trams used to sort of really look like. Which is the pink and the silver metro, where now they're all going blue, and obviously the council's spending a fortune getting them all redone. But the metro's really popular now, and it's gaining obviously its popularity. But we're in 2019, and you can only get the tram at the moment from New Street right through to Wolverhampton.
Yeah, is there a sliding scale? Because there's definitely it's incumbent upon councils to ensure that it's paying residents can commute. But it's like, where does that kind of begin and end with properties because all they're doing is boosting local house prices, which they're never going to see any revenue from other than the commute.
Yeah, that's true. But obviously, if you own the property, then obviously you're going to see that benefit, obviously, in capital appreciation over the years. There's certain areas, obviously, and if you look at Birmingham city centre over the last 5 years, there's been a property increase by about 52%. Which is absolutely amazing for anybody who owns in the city. If you're renting a property though as well, though, don't forget, and then you need that easy access in. Not everybody wants to have a car and sitting in the traffic. So yes, it's a great positivity, and I think it happens across all the city centres. I think for me, I just think Birmingham needs to play a big catch-up. I don't know what people are thinking over there at the moment. What people's thoughts are, if they've been in Birmingham, what they think of the transport. But I think it needs to be better at the moment. Look, I specialise in Birmingham property. This is where our heart of our business is. But being honest, I think it just needs to be better. Chris, what are you thinking? You catch the metro for a few days, but what do you think in general about the public transport?
Yeah, I think it definitely does need improving. I mean, like you said, I catch Metro a few times to get into the city centre, to Jewellery Quarter, and for me, it's perfect because it's only, you know, a 7-minute walk from my house to the Metro stop, which is ideal. So I can easily go to Wolverhampton. I'm sort of in the middle where I can go to Wolverhampton in 10, 15 minutes, or get to Birmingham city centre in around 20 to 25 minutes. But then, like, goes back to your point of driving as well. From home, it will take me easily 40 up to 50 minutes to get into the office. But if I'm catching the Metro, it does shorten that time to, you know, 20 minutes, and then add on a few minutes walk. So connectivity wise, access wise, it is good. It does need improving to go further out than just Wolverhampton and Birmingham. I know there's new plans to get it to the Merry Hill, but that's been, you know, in the pipeline for probably over 10 years now, I believe.
Yeah, I think you know, it's and I think it will eventually come, and the quicker the better, to be honest. But yeah, you know, look, I can tell you now, if you've got a property and you are, you know, lucky enough to be next to a park and ride, for example, you're going to find that your property is going to sell a lot quicker, because people are now, as they're coming to view properties, then they are looking immediately to find how close you are to, you know, to like a park and ride, to get into the city centre, motorway access. You know, these are now key elements when we're showing the property. It's not always now about the neighbourhood, you know, Ewan. This is about, you know, how you can get around. You know, it's most people are now working 6 days instead of 5.
So if you're selling your property then, James, is there a threshold of travel time that really where you can say to an owner who's come to you, this amount of time is optimum? What plans are there? Do you do a search of what infrastructure plans, upgrades, that sort of thing is on? Or?
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, depending on the area, you know, we always like to look around, see what's happening, you know, what improvements are coming. Now, if we can put a time on it, obviously we can only put an anticipated time, because, you know, if I take a property that's just been sold in Solihull, for example, from that house to the centre of Birmingham should take you 25 minutes. But on most days, it'll probably take you 45 minutes, you know, altogether, just purely because that's of traffic. Now, more bus routes are obviously coming into the town. So these are things that you have to look at to see, you know, how easy it is as the bus getting through. I just think that, you know, depending on between a bus route and a train, you know, between the train stops, you're going to be better actually being on the train line, because it's easier. I think also now moving forward, the Metro will play a big part in this. I grew up in Manchester, so I remember the Manchester, you know, tram arriving. You know, everyone was in uproar about it. They didn't really like it, because it was going to cause a lot of congestion in the city and out. But what Manchester did differently is they started from the centre and pushed the tram outwards. So now, obviously, it's acted like the London Tube, where it does connect everywhere, you know, quite a lot within the greater Manchester area. You know, so you've got the access of buses, trams, trains, and that's had a real positive effect on property prices across the Northwest, especially in that region. I just think where, you know, I keep coming back to the Metro, and it is a bit of a bugbear for me, because I've never really understood why did it just stop. It didn't start at New Street, if you remember. It started, you know, obviously at Snow Hill going to Wolverhampton, and there was a train service already doing it. Yes, it connected certain parts, obviously, along the way. But should it have started in the centre? Should it have then branched out? Should we have done that a little better?
I think so, definitely. But I think also that the Metro is very much serving an area of the city that gets quite left out in terms of public transport. Walsall, Wolverhampton, and out through to the Black Country has been the country cousin, if you like, of Birmingham in terms of the way it's been serviced by public
I think
transport.
so. Yeah, you're right. Because look, you know, let's look at this. So, you know, I've got a comment here about, you know, asking, you know, the most common and you know closest bus and tram routes. You know, if you're in the Jewellery Quarter, you know, and you're going to New Street, yeah, it's only a 15-20 minute walk, but most people can just jump on the tram from the Jewellery Quarter, St Paul's, for £1, and you'll be there in a few minutes. You know, that's a real popular stop. If you go into West Bromwich, you know, again, obviously for the football days, for people who are living there, again, you've got the choice of the tram and the train, you know, from there. And I just think that a lot of people who are going to be using more public transport, they're coming in from, like you say, Walsall, Halesowen, Albury area. You know, if you're coming off the Wolverhampton Road, you'd be getting the 126, for example, or if you're coming from Halesowen, the number 9, you know, and then you've got, you know, a bus lane that will take you less than a mile, and then the rest of it, you're stuck in traffic again. So even when you're on the bus, you're still caught with the people who are sat in their cars.
Question from Mara in the chat room. Krish, maybe, I don't know if you want to answer this, but she's saying, how do you go about putting listings for public transport onto your advertising literature, and what kind of emphasis do you give it? How do you promote it? Is it a major part of the sell, or is it actually just a subtle sell at the bottom end?
I think it depends on the location altogether. Some parts, like if you're looking at Solihull, for example, you do have to look at those type of things. Recent property that we sold in Solihull, the buyers, they work in the Birmingham city centre, so they wanted to look at times and indications of where the local train stop is, how long is that going to take them into the city centre. So I think it all depends on the location, but yes, there is emphasis on that. You do have to emphasize with local transport links, because not everyone drives, but also even if they do drive, if they do want to go into the town for a few drinks or a nice restaurant, whatever the case may be, they have that accessibility rather than having to driving around trying to find a car parking space, which is going to charge you, a ridiculous amount just for a few hours. So I think it is key, especially for a lot of buyers, and also, but it does depend on the location. If you're living in the Jewellery Quarter, for example, you don't really need to know that much, but you can, obviously, like James mentioned, jump on the tram and you're into the city centre in a few stops for just £1. So I think the location is a factor in that. But yeah, it does have to be emphasised as well.
Does that kind of work for the home that you're trying to sell as well? So if you're selling a family home to a family, they're less inclined to worry about the social element, more inclined to worry about the commute, whereas a single person would be more perhaps worried about the times for social aspects and that kind of thing. So last bus home, last train home, differences between the trains. Waterloo's a station near where I live, and it's great. It's a lovely little station, but even at peak time, you get a train once every hour, and it's just, oh, blimey, you'd hardly call that a nirvana of commute.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree with that. I agree. It does, a lot of families, they do drive. They're not that worried about the socializing aspect. But yeah, I suppose everyone's different. Everyone is different. So it is finding that niche and what you like to do. But yeah, a lot of people do prefer to commute altogether.
Well, this will come into something I want to talk about a little bit later, so I don't want to touch on it now. But obviously, we've got the congestion charge in Birmingham, which is the dreaded conversation coming. Where people, with cars, diesel cars, I believe pre-2015, they're going to charge £8 a day, which is coming into Birmingham city centre. And the Jewellery Quarter is caught up in this as well, which is astonishing. The accounts, I don't know what they're doing. And look, this is not a programme about let's badmouth Birmingham today. It's about how we improve it and get together and, how it impacts the properties. And, if Birmingham wants to see, a nice diversity and the property market booming, then I think needs to do a little bit. The council needs to be quicker behind this and noticing what's going on, because the Jewellery Quarter, a lot of the trade there obviously is jewellery shops. Then you've got the design element, and a lot of people obviously are in the cars. You've got the deliveries as well, but having that congestion charge pushed out away from the main central hub of Birmingham, I think is not great. And just touching, and we'll come on to that on one of my topics, but touching on just what Christian was saying there about the listings as well. Yes, I think there is an emphasis when you're in the city centre. It's pretty obvious about what public transport is around you, and it's very much about the main hubs of how close are you to New Street, how easy is it to get to New Street, because when you're in the city, you're typically going in the opposite direction when you're jumping on your public transport. And you got the tram and you can jump on it. When you're obviously further away, like in the likes of if you're in Solihull, Halesowen, Albury, just to name a few, you need to know what links you've got, especially where you're working. So if you're working in the Birmingham area, not just Birmingham, even if you're in Albury and you're working in Halesowen, for example, well, how do you get there? If you're renting a house, then, or you're buying a house in that particular area, how easy is it going to be for you to get to work on public transport? And that's something we do put on our listings to make sure that it's nice and clear. And also we discuss it obviously with potential purchasers if they're not from the area, or they're not too sure about how they would get there. It's something that we make sure that we can put them out there. But I think the message is very much about public transport is it's getting better, as well as obviously not a lot of new fleets coming around as well. but there's definitely more improvements to come. I think it just needs to be speeded up slightly to make sure that Birmingham can be a powerhouse for the Midlands and show the North how it can be done.
Is there a payoff there? I mean, you talk about London's congestion charge versus Birmingham's congestion charge, and £8 does seem an awful lot. But I wondered what the domestic versus commercial resident split in the middle of Birmingham is compared to London, because my perception would be that the domestic is far higher than as a ratio to commercial than it would be in London. And also, you look at the infrastructure in the middle of London, it is incredibly easy to get into and around London, whereas Birmingham is definitely behind the eight ball a bit on some of the routes.
Yeah, but it's yeah, I think so. If you look at London, though, a lot of people cycle as well, and obviously that's something I'm going to touch on, obviously in a short while here. To how you can get around. But yeah, I think so. I think it just needs to be, from what I understand, is Birmingham City Council have applied for a grant from central government. And I think £51 million of that is to try to offset the costs from the people who live in the congestion zone areas. So they don't have to enforce the full charge, or they're able to subsidise it. Obviously, it's still being discussed at the moment. But it is a little bit of a worry because, there's businesses are already moving out of the city centre based on this. So if you've got 10 staff and they're all driving in today, then, potentially you're at £80 a day. That's a lot of money over a 5-day week.
Is there still going to be a congestion charge for the expressway through the middle of Birmingham? Because I think that's a serious negative, because the expressway is about getting traffic through and out without intersecting.
Yeah, and I think these are all the things that now they're trying to discuss, because the way it looks like is that somebody in the office has literally just put a compass and just drawn like a 1 to 2 kilometre radius around the city on it and just gone, that'll do. Where reality is it doesn't really work like that. And I think that's one of the key things that, needs to be fought out, a little bit easier, because then you've got the issue of parking, haven't you? And I can get it. I agree with a congestion zone. So some people might, hate me for this. I do agree with it, because we want our cities to be cleaner. We want to be, if you're in the city, going to the restaurants, the dining, cinema, you want your family to go, you want to be, as stress-free as possible. And if you can get there by public transport, have a great, day or evening, and then just get home nice and easy, absolutely fantastic. And you can see why you want to stop cars. Birmingham's very car heavy. It is one of the most congested cities in the UK. So there has to be something, but will it put people off? £8, is it enough? I heard London's going to £27 a day to try and stop people bringing in their cars. So, there's give and take, isn't there? The public transport's got to be up to scratch to make sure that the masses can park up at parking rides, jump on it. But again, they don't want to be hit with the huge costs for doing so as well. And obviously, we want to, it's getting into, isn't it? Let's debate it with the local councils. If there's local councillors watching and want to come on and explain more about the decisions and how it can be improved, then more than welcome. Want you on the show?
So that'd be really good.
I think so, because people want to see it now. It's great reading about it in the papers, but we only get the snippets, where what we need to be doing now is hearing about, the facts about what they're actually going to be planning on doing and how it's going to affect moving on. And look, it's not going to be a million years away now where the tram is going to start going up Broad Street. It's always going to come across Paradise Circus, stop it outside HSBC, and then they're going to extend it all the way up to Five Ways. Now that's going to cause even more congestion at the moment. So, but it'll be great for the city. It will be great seeing that tram go up. I just hope it's going to go further. If they're going to take it up to Five Ways, what's the plan after that? Because, if they can find a way that, they can get it past, obviously where it's going to stop on after Five Ways. I think it's 51 Hagley Road or 47 Hagley Road, I believe. But where can they get it further? Because it looks like it's only going to stop there, and then it looks like the places like Bearwood, which is a local town that's got a lot of people living in. A lot of people commute on the buses from Bearwood. Seems to be getting forgotten about, and I think if the tram could be extended up that way, leading into Quinton, down into Hales Owen, then you've got an absolute thriving area coming in from the west side of Birmingham there. Well, look, moving on, that's enough of public transport. It's all down to local councils, public consultations. We all want to see that. But Christian, you want to change the subject, I believe, and you want to be talking about the Jewellery Quarter. And is there too many, not just apartments, but is there too many properties now being developed in the Jewellery Quarter, or does the demand support it?
Yeah, definitely. So that's my topic for today. And recently, over a few recent years, we are seeing more and more people coming to Birmingham from the likes of London, Manchester for work due to HSBC, etc. And they're all coming and saying that they want to be either in the city centre or around the Jewellery Quarter area. Now, Jewellery Quarter is a very popular area especially for tenants altogether, because you've got your nice bars, your nice restaurants, your walking distance to the city centre, or a short tram hopper ride, and it's got that nice feel to it. Like you mentioned, it's got all the jewellery shops, but it's not just. I think with the Jewellery Quarter, it's renowned for that, but I think it's a lot more, and that's what's attracting a lot of tenants now. But we are seeing more and more developers coming in, building apartments, just down the road. I think it's 7 Capital. They've just built 292 new homes. There's another 500 which is being planned for the edge of Jewellery Quarter. And is it enough? Are we getting the demand? I mean, there is demand there, but is it enough to argument to say that the supply is there as well? I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think altogether?
Oh, it's the Jewellery Quarter is obviously a day that I'm in probably 6 days a week, and I have to be quite careful on this one, because if developers are watching, if I do the opposite, they might not want to work with me. But yeah, I think the difference is, look, there's a lot of apartments being built. Every day now, or every other day in the paper, we are reading or seeing from the planning office that there's 292, 300, 400 apartments now being built. Is that enough? Is it enough? Because there is a big demand, as you mentioned, from the tenants there. And the average tenant, I'm just obviously showing a clip here, Ewan. They've put it up for me. About the ages profile of people who are staying in the Jewellery Quarter. And your sweet spot is between people who are 25 to 30. And the question is, people want apartments at that age. They're not into the houses yet. They are, they're renting, the tenants pushing through. They don't want the 3-4 bedroom townhouses. They want the 1-2 bedroom apartments, fast internet speed, and, close to the pub, as I've got here from our stats here, these are just for the Jewellery Quarter. So just to let everybody know, 96.9% of the homes in the Jewellery Quarter are within a 200-meter walk of a bus train, or a bus train or tube, which would be the metro, which is unbelievable. The UK average is 80.6. So the Jewellery Quarter is, the place to be, isn't it? It's a conservation area, it's low rise, but we're seeing the change. We are seeing townhouses now appear, and some are moving quickly, some are not moving quickly on the market. There is still properties to rent, but is it the case that, I'm just going to flip this a little bit, 5,324 people living in the Jewellery Quarter, or within the Jewellery Quarter, and that was an increase of 298%, which is unbelievable. That's the 10 years between 2001 and 2011. So that just shows you the population growth that the Jewellery Quarter alone has had to cope with. Mm-hmm. Now, let me flip this on its head at the moment. We're saying, is there possibly too much? However, is it the case there's not too much? It's that more modernisation needs to be done. So let me just put that out there. Is it the case that people who are renting property, because the majority of people who are in the Jewellery Quarter rent property, are they now fed up of properties that have been there for 10 years? Landlords haven't really maintained them that well. They haven't looked after them. They don't have the right internet coming in, or the speeds, etc. And they're now looking at the newer developments. So I know you mentioned the likes of 7 Capital. From there, you also had McCourt, obviously, with the dual court getting, and people are looking for the newer ones that have got the nice new modern kitchens, the parquet flooring. The developers have made sure that high-speed internet, the main hubs are coming into the development, and then it can be split. Or is it the case that just the tenants' demands are changing?
There's a bit of history as well with this. I worked an awful lot in the Jewellery Quarter in the 80s through to the early 90s, and the area had started to decline at that point. Jewellery was shrinking. There was a lot of associated cash and carry places turning up with point of sale stuff, or equipment that you could use in jewellery making that was going. There was a massive manufacturing area all round there, of small businesses, and that had started to really get into decline in the early 90s. So those properties, there's a lot of properties in the Jewellery Quarter have lain empty for quite a long time, or have not been used. So if you're saying, well, I don't like the idea of them being domestic developments, well, you weren't doing any commercial developments, so why not? And there's a demand for housing, so let's get in there and let's do what people want.
Yeah, I think so.
That's the history of, I think, where that area is coming from.
I think so. Yeah, I think you're definitely right, and I think just demand's changing now. And yes, we don't always like to see development after development after development, but at the same time, do you want to drive down streets where you're just seeing empty old warehouses that have had their day?
That's what it was.
Unfortunately, because we would love to still have that powerhouse if it could be and have the history, but times have moved on. It has changed, and it's just no longer there anymore. So I think you're right. They've got to be redeveloped. Is it the case, though, we have some outside developers maybe coming in and just cashing in on the property boom for Birmingham? Are selling the prices, they're driving them up too quickly, too fast. There's an argument to say that. One of the questions I'm just reading here is, what area do we think would be to get on the property ladder and invest, obviously for the future? And I think definitely the Jewellery Quarter is one of these places. It's a very well-established area. And I think this is where you want to be coming in. You can see what's there. You can see what's going on. And you know what you're going to get for your money. All it can be done is improve slightly. If you had to look at another area like Digbeth, for example, which we'll talk about in a future program and potentially an up and coming, there's a lot there that needs to be done. And yes, there's older buildings, but a lot of the buildings are still occupied. They're still being run as commercial areas and probably have no way of changing again in the future. And the big developers want to come in and change that whole area. But if someone's got a thriving business for the last 20, 30 years there, are they going to move out? They might want to stay. And if the warehouse is half fallen to bits, it'll be half fallen to bits. You potentially, that's what you're going to be overlooking, in your property. And I just think the Jewellery Quarter is just a lot more well connected. With the low rise, you can get into St. Paul's. You've got all, the broadband, it's, look what I've got here, 69.9% of properties have access to the ultra fast broadband. So people looking at, especially, tenants, Netflix, your Sky Goes, your Amazon Primes, your Skype calls. A lot of international, obviously, tenants are into the Jewellery Quarter as well. Especially with your design companies, they all need the high-speed internet. But again, if we're looking at the local authority district of Birmingham as a total, 41.4. So the Jewellery Quarter, infrastructure-wise, is miles ahead now. So all you got to do now is look for, like, one of the questions is, where's a good place to get into? Let's get into an area in which is established, and they're just enhancing the area. I put a property up a few days ago on the website. For those of you not sure of it, it's birminghampropertynews.co.uk, and it's a lovely penthouse property, 1 bedroom. I think it was £149,950 in the Jewellery Quarter.
Yes.
Views over the city because of where it is. If that's still on the market, I am shocked, because that is a prime investment property. We would rent that all day long. We wouldn't have it on the market for less than a week before that would be taken. So yes, I think there's a bit of a demand. If I'm looking at the market snapshot, as I said, property prices in the last 12 months in the Jewellery Quarter have gone up 2%. In the last 5 years, 59%. It's that's unbelievable. For it.
There's a point here from Claire in the chat room saying, is the Jewellery Quarter Birmingham's Notting Hill?
I think so. What do you think, Chris? You're a lot younger than me, so you probably go out in the Jewellery Quarter a lot more than probably I do. So I'm too old.
No, I think it's a valid point. Like I mentioned earlier, it's got the bars, the restaurants, but then you've got St. Paul's as well, and it's quirky. I think it's a little bit different, a little bit of a different vibe compared to going into the city centre with the hustle and bustle of Broad Street, etc., and the major sort of nightclubs. Whereas if you come into the Jewellery Quarter, you can go for a nice few drinks, bit of nice food, and it's a relaxed and chilled environment. So I think on the socialising aspect, it's a little bit different compared to going into the normal town centre. But yeah, I agree with that point. I think so. Being my age, I'm 28, and I enjoy coming to the Jewellery Quarter, not just obviously for work, but for socialising as well, and also St. Paul's, rather than going from into the city centre. I'd much prefer going around the Jewellery Quarter or St. Paul's for drinks, a bit of food, etc., and that aspect. So I agree with that point. I mean, I'm not sure what you guys think, being a bit, obviously a bit older, but
I don't be that cheeky.
What's the economic demographic as well? I mean, are we talking about young professionals here with lots of disposable income, so therefore they're going to start to drag the local businesses up with them as well? Like, a local Tesco, or the Tesco Goes, those kind of things that are.
Great point. You've got two Tesco Extras, and every time I go, they are very busy, even during lunch times especially. You've got the workforce that are coming there all together, and people doing their regular shopping, but you've got the big Tesco just down the road, 24-hour Tesco. So again, they've got a huge supply. They don't have to travel too far, which again is in their favor, and I think that's why Jewellery Quarter is such a popular area, and why people, especially tenants, want to live here. You do get people that want to live here full time, and they buy their own homes. But I think, read on that snapshot there that James has got, there are over 3,400 dwellings within the Jewellery Quarter. 92.7% of those properties are flats. Only 7.3% of those are houses. Now, out of that, 25%, only 25% of those households own their own homes, while 61% live in privately rented accommodation. So I think that's a key point there, and that's where you look at it. And for investors and landlords, they look at the Jewellery Quarter, they see that, it is a thriving area, especially for tenants. But also people do like to live here as well for a longer period of time. Like you said, obviously the average age is, as you get older, you're not going to want to live in an apartment, and that's when you move further out of the city, and you look at getting a 3 or 4 bedroom house with your family and a dog. But for the time being, I think Jewellery Quarter is a fantastic area, and I think it really is thriving.
Well, I think so, and I think Ewan just picked up a point there about the Tesco's and being there, but I'm a big believer of the local business, in the local high streets, and I think the Jewellery Quarter could be one of these UK success stories. They've got a great little team, obviously, with the JQ Bid, who are looking after all the local businesses. They've got local cleaners, obviously, doing the area as well. And I think it's like, if I just name a few places where I go, you've got Otto's, which is a lovely pizza place. It's very hipster. When you go in, it's all with the, not the open fire, what do you call it, where you do the pizzas in the ovens, the open ovens, open fire ovens. You've got AR Rocha, which is a very quirky sort of cocktail stroke Spanish bar where every bit of art that you see in there is for sale, and that drives a bit of an older clientele now. You and going into it, it's quite a quirky place. And then you've all and I think that you've got Lunchy up in the square, by the girls there who've lived in Birmingham, born and bred. And if you've not been in there, as soon as they speak to you, you'll understand what I mean there. And they are really friendly, and I think this is where you want it to be. We've got a couple of barbershops that have come in. The barbers just next door to our offices are flat out, 6 days a week. And I think it has turned now where we've seen the sort of the jewelry side into the professionals, the hipsters are now moving in. And actually you're starting to see professionals move in who want to mix. And I think that's the beauty about the Jewellery Quarter, is that if you're going to invest in a property, you've got to remember sometimes it's about what your demographic is you're aiming for. So if you're after professionals, they're looking for areas that are established, that they can jump on public transport, they can go to the quirky bars, the restaurants, and everything. They've got everything around them. They've got the local shops should they need them, but everything's there. And I think that's the beauty of it, isn't it? If you want to go to a concert at the Birmingham Arena, then you can walk there within 10 minutes, if that. Just walk along the canal and walk up. It's great. If you go into St. Paul's, you can go a bit posher, and you can go into the St. Paul's bar and you can go to nice Italians. You've got the Jam House. I was there just before Christmas listening to a band, my first time ever in there. Shocked, where it was, but what a great night. And it was all professional and an older crowd. And I thought that's quite interesting. And is it something to watch for the future now for the Jewellery Quarter? Because as I'm just showing this, as I'll just put the profile up again, please, Ewan, is if you look at this, out of the properties in the Jewellery Quarter, 36% of them comprise of just one person. So you can see that the one bed sort of situation, or the 1 bed, 2 bed apartment, is very strong. where only 6% include families with children. But what's interesting, and I just think, is that where you can have too many townhouses? Because one of the most expensive properties in the last 3 months, I'll have to put it up on a different slide here for you, was £590,000 on Branston Street. Now, if townhouses are going to come into it, is the demand going to be there, or are these houses going to be snapped up and the rooms are going to be rented out on an individual room basis? But I love the Jewellery Quarter. I think it is fantastic. I don't think that price growth will stop. I think it will increase more because it's got the infrastructure already there. All they have to do now is enhance it. And I think done right, the Jewellery Quarter could be one of the places where the UK government looks at about how the high street can do very well. And I think it's about the local independents, flourishing, having their own individuality and really pushing it forward.
I keep forgetting about the canals as a commute route. I lived in Birmingham for most of my life, and I forget about the canals as a route to commute through the middle of the city.
Well, I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about that on part of mine as well. So let's move on to Jewellery Quarter. And obviously, look, if you're thinking of investing and you just want a second opinion and sit down, you want to know about it, just drop us a line, info@birminghampropertynews.co.uk, or get involved. Come on here, let's talk about it. More than welcome. But as Ewan's just said, in Birmingham, we forget about the big history here, about the canal network, that really integrates the city here. And my topic tonight is cycling. Now, you're going to think, how does that affect the property prices? Well, with all the public transport and the tram changing and the congestion charge coming into it, why are the council, the planners, still insisting if you are building a city centre apartment block that you've got to have a provision? And it typically at the moment still is one parking space for one apartment. I just don't get it. I really don't get it.
Not in the middle of a city, no.
It can't be, can it? If you're extending the metro and you want to have a car-free zone, which is really what this is aimed at, you can see already, then you've got to have more cycling. I was reading a report the other day that Birmingham, not the West Midlands, Birmingham alone is one of the most unsafe places to cycle. And it's unbelievable. There's £23 million coming that the government have gone in for the Birmingham cycle revolution. Again, Andy Street is there. He's championing it. Love it. I think it's great. Look, I'm a cyclist myself. So, now and again, and, I do cycle I'll commute on the bike if I haven't got meetings, but it's not safe, to be honest. I have to have cameras everywhere just in case, I have an accident, on the road. But the route I come in, there's actually, apart from a mile of bus lane, there's no cycle route at all, unless I go down the canals. But in the 23rd of January, it's freezing cold. It's icy over the canals, and icy on the tracks. So you've got to come down the main route and you're dicing with your life. And I just think to be in 2019 now, this needs speeded up. This money, we've got the A34 coming from Perry Bar and the A38 coming through. And there's the new big cycle super highways that, are all over the press for Birmingham. But that's it. Where's the rest? Where is it? Krish, where is it?
I have no idea.
It's unbelievable. There's a lot of cycle storages going everywhere. The cycle racks, we've seen them all installed.
There's a great point in the chat room here about what about the infrastructure for storing bikes as well? Because you turn up at your residence or you turn up at your corporation, and unless they're providing you with a bike shed, a bike rack, somewhere secure, you can't be taking it in the building. That nullifies any benefit of a cycle route if there's no end point.
Well, a lot of developers, this is what they do, and they get around it now, is they will say, look, we need to have like a 1-in-4 ratio. So, 1 parking space to 4 apartments, because they'll put the cycle provisions in. But I think it should be a lot more. If you're living in the city centre, the whole point you want to live in the city centre is because of the ease and the convenience to get everywhere. From there, and you should have to pay a premium for parking. Not everyone agrees with that, but if you're partners and kids, you're not going to live in the city. The chances are you're going to be living in the outskirts in a house with parking space in the garage. So this is more about, the commuting as well coming into it. And it does have an effect on the property prices, because if you take London now, with the super cycle highways, the numbers are unbelievable on a daily basis now that, you see. I know you're in London quite a bit, Ewan, and, surely you see the cyclists all the time, but they're just off now from the traffic, aren't they? They've got that. I wouldn't say it's not, the safest, but it's a lot safer than what it used to be.
I was in London a few years ago, and I went to cross the road in Victoria, and the guy held onto my arm, and a cyclist went the wrong way down the one-way street, and I was focused on the taxis and the buses. And he said, "You're going to get hit. It's probably more by a cyclist than a taxi or a bus."
I knew someone tonight was going to go against the cyclists.
No, I'm not going against it. It's just the thing is, you forget that they're small and they're light, and they're easy to get through traffic, which is why you ride a blooming bike in the first place.
Yeah.
So
and to get fit.
Yeah, but your focus is drawn towards the bigger things, isn't it? And you do forget about cyclists being there and being that mobile.
But it does have an effect on property prices, a slight one, because you've got to look at it. People who are looking to buy properties in the cities, either you've got your investors coming in. Now, the investors are going to be renting the property to tenants. A lot of tenants like to ride bikes. And they, like you're saying, you need the storage for them. So the developments must have adequate bike storage and secure bike storage. I think that's the key thing, because, you'll have anything from £100 bike to a £4,000 or £5,000 electric bike that people may be using. So you've got to have the good storage on it as well. And these are all the things that you want, tenants to have. If someone's buying it as an owner occupier, because you've got developments. I was outside Tennant Street Lofts today. It's a lovely development on Tennant Street, just off Broad Street. And they've had first-time buyers buying into the development. And you want nice bike storage, because if people are there and they're thinking, right, I'm in a city and I just want to go and cycle down the canals, I want to cycle across to the parks, I want to keep fit, then this is what you need. And it only adds. And of course, as you say, you don't want to be taking a bike into a 2-bedroom apartment, and having it fixed onto the wall with some fancy gadgets. Ideally, you want to have it in, protected bike storage, like what I can see here on the comments here, like a bike shed. And you can get these now, which keeps them nice and secure as well, and get more people out on the bikes. Let's see this around the development. So, I think it's good in the summer. We see it, but this morning, I saw the bikes coming down, stuck in the traffic. And they're weaving in and out the traffic, which is obviously legal. But you do wonder, why is the council and the planners not accelerating? If they really want Birmingham, accelerating the growth of it, if they want Birmingham to be an area where people can get around by tram, bikes, car, etc., why is this not being? Why have they not got segregated bike lanes?
Yeah, when you said about Birmingham's the most dangerous city to cycle in, I immediately started thinking, where is the cycle routes? And I can't think of a single one.
They're difficult, aren't they?
I cannot think of a single cycle route in Birmingham.
Well, we've got the A38 coming.
Other than the canals.
Well, we've got the A38 coming, and obviously then we've got the A34 from Perry Bar. So they're all coming in with what they're calling the super cycle highways altogether. They're pretty close to being open, but that's it. There's no connectivity, and I think that's the big difference here. You've got to connect it all up. There's no point just having a great big message and going, great, we're building it. We're going to put it all down, and yes, it's safe because, it's as safe as we possibly can make it, because, we're putting it down through, where the trees and the grass were, and the traffic's going to be on either side, so it is purely off the way from the cars. But then that traffic, that will end somewhere. Now, to twist it, because it's Birmingham, if I went into Sandwell, for example, there's bike lanes everywhere. Some obviously are on the road and they mix in with the traffic, but there's a lot more, obvious bike lanes in Sandwell than there is in Birmingham. But the place works together as part of the West Midlands.
So go back. I mean, that's because there's a bit more space as well, perhaps. But go back to your original point about the congestion charge. Is the congestion charge in place so that you reduce the number of cars, you make more space, and the money you generate from what's there pays for the cycle routes?
Well, yeah, I think so. And we'll look at it. I love my bikes. From there. So it's sorry, I'm just laughing at one of the comments about some canals is where the bikes get parked. It's not just Birmingham that happens, I can assure you. But where obviously Birmingham's part of this new trial, where I think there's 4,000 bikes are about to arrive in Birmingham that people can rent, which is great. I think that's great. It's very much going to be like the Boris bikes, isn't it? Where there is bikes there everywhere, people can jump on them. But then half of the city, you're not allowed to ride your bike anyway. So there's a bit of backward thinking, I think, here. And I think it all needs to come together where, the architects who are doing the master plans with the planners from the council leaders, from there, the people who are on the planning committee, developers, they all need to be coming and agreeing what needs to happen in the city. Because it does look like at the moment, one's saying one thing, one's saying the other, and the people who are actually in charge have got their own concept of how this should all work. And it will affect it, because if the city becomes uncommutable and it gets more and more difficult, property prices will slightly decline, is my own opinion, because it will become less attractive for people to come to. And they will look at other areas. And I'm just talking about the city centre here, because if all of a sudden you've got places like Sandwell, that yes, it's not the city, but it's easier to get around, there's better public transport, better cycle routes, better way of living, tenants will start to move out into these areas and think, well, actually, I can save a little bit of money on my rental because my 1-2 bedroom apartment might be a bit cheaper if you're moving as a family, etc. And you can still have the great way of life, but you're just not in the city centre anymore, or the Jewellery Quarter or Digbeth, for example. And I think that's just where we need that joined up connectivity for this to really play out and make Birmingham the place, one, to be investing, to be owning property.
Definitely.
Perfect. Well, look, I think that'll do for tonight, unless you've got any questions, Christian?
No, it's been a pleasure.
Ewan?
No, that was good.
How are we doing on the chat? Anyone asking questions that we've not answered, or?
No, I mean we've had quite a few comments come through. I think more than questions, but there's one here from that which he says I've seen developments that have got lock-up cages in the basement parking areas.
Yeah,
a lot of places don't seem to do that.
They don't, and I think what it'll come down to is it's expense on a developer's point, because the developer's got to put it in. And I think developers want to do this. They would rather do more bike storage and put it in, because of course it frees up more space for them. But they're only going to do that if they see the demand for cycling take off. And this was one of the things I've read. Only 3% of the figures at the moment of the people who do cycle the people who cycle around Birmingham, it's about 3% at the moment of the population. And Birmingham have got a target where they want to get this. And this target outstands me. It's 10%. So it doesn't seem a big jump, does it? 7% by 2033.
Yeah, that's a lot.
What, 14 years away? Do 7%? It just seems that we talk, well, not me, but, Birmingham will talk about this and they want it. But then the reality is the urgency to deliver it is not there. And, London, talked about it and they've acted very quickly, and they saw the benefits of this. And then it's not always about property prices. It's also about property being attractive in an area. And I think it's great if you can walk out your door and get to everywhere, no matter what way or another, that's what you want. If you can walk to your restaurants, your shops, your workplace, if you want, then go out cycling, you can do. You can jump on the tram, the public transport. You've got a great life, haven't you? Just everything's there for you. It just runs smoothly. And I think, yes, it's a great question. I think more developers would, in the underground basements, have the lockups, make it there. But we just need it to come from the council side of it to make sure that, they're providing more safe cycle lanes. And I think that's the key thing, isn't it? It's safe. Don't just go and put bike pictures on the road and expect drivers to conform immediately with it. You need to make it safe. And I think, you can look at places like Denmark, Holland, and you can take as much inspiration off them as possible. And I think it's a great place to start, but you need to put the money where the mouth is to make it work. So look, I think that's great. Obviously, we're going to be here next Wednesday, again at 6:00. Would love you to come on board. So if you want to get, if there's any developers, local councillors, anything we've discussed tonight, or obviously we're going to have new topics. You want to get involved, just give us a call or drop on 0121 296 2600, or drop us an email at info at birminghampropertynews.co.uk. This can only be brought to you by Barrows and Forrester, who are sponsoring the Birmingham Property Show. But get involved, have a chat, give us your questions. This is what we're here for. Let's discuss it. Being great, obviously, having our first night. It's only going to improve, but we'll see you next week. Thank you very much.